I'm good. Well, first of all, that was just beautiful. I love to sing, and I especially love the writers of these songs. You just know they've been there. You know, when you hear those kind of lyrics and the words that so many are singing today, there's a new song I just totally have fallen in love with, and it's called Evidence. I don't know if you've heard that song. It's, you know, I've seen the evidence in my life, and it's true. If we just look for it. And, you know, I started out, I suppose I should share where I started out as a Catholic girl in a very well-to-do Catholic home with a very well-educated family. And, you know, the problem I had was that I just kind of didn't fit. And my brothers and sisters were all brunettes and blondes, and I was a bright, we don't know it now, but I was a very bright redhead with a lot of freckles. And so I took a lot of hits from the family over that, and a few remarks that maybe I was adopted, which I kind of began to believe when I looked around the family and saw I didn't fit in. But the reality is that God used that, and He's used it all my life, that I've always been different. And I didn't want to be different. I tried not to be different. But I did things that caused a lot of problems in my home. I set fire to the living room one day, I was just checking out how a lighter worked, and it set fire to the living room that my mother had just redecorated. And of course, it all burned up, and I shut the door and left. And I hoped that it would go out, which it did not. And so that was one of my beginning episodes. And then a little while later, I had that same lighter, and I thought maybe it would work in a field. And of course, I set fire to the field in our backyard, and it burned all the way to the next door neighbors. And of course, everybody was out there looking at me saying, she did it. And I was denying it. I've lived in denial a lot in my life. And then not too long after that, my father was made commissioner of the city, and I decided that I wanted to sell dandelions. I needed to make money. Of course, I really didn't, but me and another kid picked dandelions. We were pretty dirty and snotty-nosed, and we sat out in front of this beautiful home selling dandelions, 5 cents a bundle. And that made the front page of the newspaper that the city commissioner could no longer afford to take care of his family. So I think my father was kind of justified in being very tired of me by the time I hit 8 or 9 years old. I existed in that family. Well, little by little, I tried to conform, I really did. I won't tell you about the ham that the dog got away with, because that was an accident too. And I won't tell you about, how, we went behind the hospital dumps, and we're going through the hospital dump and Westfield Noble Hospital was right down the street, and how we were out there digging through the body parts. I mean, me and my little neighborhood friend, and we got arrested. And these things went on in my early childhood because I was curious. And I was so different. My 2 sisters were very well behaved, which they will tell you this day, and my brothers too. And so little by little, my father and I began to have this rift between us that he found it was easier just to not deal with me, punish me, put me away, keep me in the house, this sort of thing. And that went on until I got into the St. Thomas School in West Springfield, and from home to home that we moved to, there were just things that would happen that I didn't try to make happen, but they would happen. I won't go into some of those because it's not, some pumpkins were involved at one point, and yes, I was there. And there was things where friends of mine had come over and something got damaged, and yes, I was there. And so I confessed all the time, but not willingly. So I finally decided that, okay, I didn't have anybody to talk to at the house. My sisters ignored me, my brothers were too young, and my mother was non-communicative, and she was old Vermont. And my father, he just kind of reached that point where I was just a real annoyance. But my point is, when you have a child like that in the home, maybe you need to spend a little more time with that one. And that's what I have learned from this whole experience, is that I spent a lot of time with my own children. I have 6 of them, and 4 of our own and 2 of somebody else's that we took in. And we raised them, Joe and I. But as time went on, I went into grammar school and I became popular. You know, people liked a crazy girl, crazy redhead, and so I got along really well. And I loved sports and swimming, and I belonged to the country club, and I got away from being so disruptive. And but in the 8th grade, when my sisters were both going to the cathedral in Springfield, and I was so excited to be going to the cathedral that I never even thought that I wouldn't be going there. And my father announced that summer that I wasn't going, that he was putting me into Ursuline Academy for Girls, which was an all-girl private school with a group of semi-cloistered nuns who'd never left the campus. And I'm now going to be trapped in this place with people I don't know. I'm not going with my friends onto the cathedral where my sisters are. And so now I'm being punished by this man. But the point I'm trying to make a little bit is, as this went on, I prayed a lot. I did novenas. I did I don't know if you know much about Catholicism, but I had enough novenas to get me out of purgatory if I were to die and go there. I was prepared. I knew they weren't praying me out. They were going to say she's going to stay. So I worked on indulgences, plenary indulgences. I worked on novenas, and all of a sudden now I'm being forced to go into this place with these nuns have never been out in the world. I'm going into a place I don't want to be. And so I begged and pleaded. I fell on the floor. I cried. I begged and pleaded. I threatened to run away. And they put me in Ursuline Academy, and I went. So I made it the first year pretty well. Second year I was doing really great. Get into the junior year, I now had one of the most popular boys at Westside High School as my boyfriend. I'd made friends. I'm thinking, I've got it made. My father came home and he announced that summer when I was going to go into my senior year in high school, okay, we're moving to New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I bought a chemical company in Newark, New Jersey, and that's where you're going to live. And I'm now going to have to leave all my friends, all this new life. The second time I've built this whole new group of friends, and I had the prom, and I had all these plans for senior year, and that my dad moved us to North Brunswick, New Jersey. And the whole way in the car, I cried. I begged and I cried, and I planned and I plotted how to get out of that place. I got there, and as I suspected, I was going to be put in this horrible Catholic school that didn't want me. And they decided they didn't want me, and I was kind of glad about that. And so I got put into a public high school for the first time. That was a big mistake. I was smarter than all the kids. I didn't have to do all the courses they did because I'd completed them in private school. So now I took English 1, I took all this stupid stuff, typing 1, economics 1. I didn't take any senior year classes. And I just spent the whole year learning how to skip school, how to get straight A's, and how to hang out down at the friend's house down the bottom of the hill and drink coffee and play guitar music. That ended up being my senior year. I did graduate with honors, and I don't know how because it was all dumb courses, but I did. And then that summer, my dad decided I needed to work, and I needed, instead of going to college, I was going to work. And I didn't want to go to his plant and work in Havix Chemical and work with oil and people. And I had plans. I was going to go here and there. And then we just butted heads. And on a Friday night, I was miserable. It was in September, and I said, I was going out with some friends, and I went out with them, and I never went home. We went out, and they were having so much fun, a group of bikers. I kind of liked bikers. They were a little bit like myself, a little rebellious, a little on the crazy side. But during all of this whole time, I'm thinking about this God who is not making my life work out the way I wanted it to. So I began to stop praying to him. And I kind of disassociated from him, and I kind of thought of my father in the wrong way. My living father and my God the Father, they were one and the same. Harsh, hard, non-responsive, not giving me any leeway, never having a conversation with me. And I'm praying to some emptiness. I had no feeling for God at all. And I lost God. And I went on with these friends. I never went home. I went out, I met some guy at the 7-Eleven. He said, come on, get on my bike. We went over to his place, and that's where I stayed. And from that point on, I lived with a biker gang for over 2 years. And I lived recklessly, and I won't even go into that. I don't even remember that girl. I think she's way back here somewhere. Like that song said, I've been redeemed. Thank God I've been redeemed. Because without God, I don't know how I even survived doing what we were doing. But riding recklessly, getting drunk on a motorcycle is not a smart thing, but I didn't think about it. I didn't think about death anymore. I didn't think about God anymore. But then this man that I took off with that night, I married him because I thought I had to. I had 2 children now, and I'm into 2.5 years with this. And one day I woke up and I thought, this isn't where I should be. This isn't my life. And so I broke that relationship, another man relationship that was bad. He was very abusive, and he was a biker, so you can imagine. And I got away from that life and took my kids, and now I'm from a very wealthy home. I had belonged to the country club, but I learned about welfare. I learned about how to get on welfare, and I learned how to live on $84 a month. And we got an apartment, me and the 2 children, and then I met another biker guy, who I'm now with 55 years. But he came along, and he was like my savior, and he was gonna save me from all of the misery. It doesn't work that way. And if anybody's listening to anything, that doesn't work. And so what happened is I became popular again. We bought a house. We moved in to be respectable. I became a director of library outreach services. I don't know how that was all God. I don't know how I got that job, but I did. I became president of the PTA. I got very proper. But underneath it all, I was totally and completely lost. And I'm so thankful to the Lord that he saw that little girl that was lost. Amen. And I wanted a father. And you know, I just challenge men, if you have that little girl in your home that you're not communicating with, or a granddaughter, or a child in your neighborhood that needs a dad or a man to just talk to her, that was me. If I would have had any instruction or any relationship with that father, I think nothing, I don't know where my life would have been, but it's where it's supposed to be now. And so there's not one person around you, in your family, in your grandchildren, that is not reachable. No matter how hardcore they may seem, I was very hardened. And by the time these 2 women came into my life, one was a babysitter for my son Michael. And that lady, she drove me nuts. She was all about, you know, gotta pray for you. And I'd say, you know, hang on your prayers. I don't need them. You know, I'm a good Catholic, don't worry about it. And I was not a good Catholic. But anyway, she would come over with my little son, and next thing I know, he's singing these little Jesus songs. He's sitting in the car and he's singing, Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so. I said, what are you reading, a Bible, Michael? He says, oh, Aunt Angie's teaching me these songs. I was like, tell Aunt Angie you don't sing those songs. And I said, we just sing hymns. I can't even believe I did that, but I did. Anyway, so being unreachable, this other friend of hers, Mildred, she was an old Pentecostal lady with the bun and the black stockings and the long dress. And she always carried this Bible around with her. And I said to Angie one day, what has she got under her arm? Is that a book? She said, no, it's a Bible. And I said, a Bible? Golly, can she think of nothing else to do? And she said, no, we're trying to, you know, learn the Bible and we're reading it. She said, I've gotten saved. I said, saved from what? You know, Angie, what did you need to be saved from? She said, from my sins. I was like, oh goodness, weren't you baptized? And she's, you know, that's how I believed. They decided, the 2 of these women decided that I needed God. And so they put a pact together, and for a solid year, they didn't leave me alone. They did not give me any rest, but I needed a babysitter. And so I would be very rude. And the one lady, Angie, she was on our bowling team with me and my husband. And we'd all party and bowling and all that, beers and having fun. And she, excuse me, I've been crying a lot here. Wait a minute. We got a sponsor for our bowling shirts. They were pink with dark red lettering, and it was Vinny's Bar and Grill on our back. She arrived over at our house on an afternoon before bowling, and she said, Alice, I can't wear that shirt. I said, what are you talking about? This is our team. You have to wear the team shirt. She said, I can't wear that shirt. And she said, God spoke to me. And I went, oh, so now God is actually talking to you. And she said, he woke me up last night, and he told me, tell Alice you can't wear that shirt. And I was so livid and mean. I said, this is it. This God thing is way out of control, Angie. You need to get a life. And my husband, in the meantime, who is totally unsaved, says, so she doesn't have to wear the shirt. She's a good bowler. Let her bowl. And I was like, no, she's going to wear the shirt. We had this big fight, and she did not wear the shirt, but it stuck with me. She thinks she's hearing from God on a bowling shirt. And I said, I think God is much busier than your bowling shirt. But see, it's been 55 years ago, and I still remember that conversation to this day. And I remembered it many times after. But she stuck to it, and then she and Mildred, the other lady, Mildred Briggs, decided to fast and pray for a whole year for my soul. They invited me to their Monday night Bible study. And I said, I had a theater group in my library system that I had every Monday night. So finally, to get them off my back, I told them, here's the deal. If the group cancels on a Monday night, I'll go to your Bible study. That winter comes along, here comes a blizzard, and a big blizzard, and she's bringing Michael home, and she says, Alice, maybe your group isn't going to be tonight, there's a blizzard. And I said, so you guys all get together and pray on a day like today? She said, you said, and believe it or not, I was a person of my word. She said, you said that if you didn't have your theater group, you'd go to the Bible study. I said, well, I can't because we had 6 kids. Who's going to watch the kids? Who comes walking through the door? My husband. He got sent home from work. And she looked at him, and he's looking at us, and she said, do you think you could watch the kids tonight so Alice can go to Bible study? He said, yeah, sure. I was like, stuck, nailed. So she says, bring your Bible. I don't have a Bible. And Joe says, yes, we do. We have a Bible upstairs in the living room. We had a pulpit Bible that some minister has. It was this big. And I thought, that's what I'm bringing to this thing? Fine, because I still didn't know that Mildred was carrying a small Bible. The snow is coming down. I'm thinking they're going to cancel any minute. No, they showed up. They pulled in my driveway, and I go walking out with this Bible. And they're sitting in the car, the two of them, with a look on their face, and they were stricken. And I said, well, I have a very large Bible. Yours are very small. When I got in the car, and they're like, yes, it's okay. They didn't say a word. And I said, here's the rules. If I'm going to go to this meeting, I said, I will not get in a circle because those are seances, and I know that. And they said, okay. And I said, and nobody's to touch me. I said, I know they touch people at these things, and nobody touches. And she said, we're not going to touch you. We are not going to touch you. So I said, and if I want to leave, I'm out, and you'll take me home. Fine. We get to this house, and there's all these people there. There's like about 40 people there. And of course, I think they've been waiting for me to show up for a year. And they had a big circle of chairs. Aha. They're going to have a type of seance thing with these books. They're smaller books, and I have the real Bible, the big giant one. So I took my big giant Bible, and they took a wingback chair, and they pushed it back over here, so they're all over in the circle, and I'm out here in the wing chair. And so I have my big Bible, and of course, I'm going through it like I knew nothing about the Bible. I'm going through it like I'm looking at what they're reading. Oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm not reading anything. I'm just watching into my eyes. So they started to pray. And I had always done rote praying. The Our Father, the Hail Mary, the catechismic, I had a catechism. I prayed all my prayers from there. They were all written out for me. But no, these people were praying like we did tonight. and different ones would pray for this person or pray for that person. I'm sitting there with my big book, just keeping my head down, thinking, you know, they're talking like they're just talking. And as they began to pray, and this, you know, I'm spirit-filled now. I wasn't then. Believe me, I was not spirit-filled at that night. But they began to really pray in the Spirit, and some of them were singing a little bit in the back, and all of a sudden, I had the anointing of God fell on me, and it's as though it has happened today. The presence of God fell over me, and such a warmth came over me. Amen. And I'm sitting there with this feeling, thinking, can they see how I'm acting? Because it was so powerful that I couldn't even speak. I just sat there and I hung on to that Bible for dear life. And the presence of God was so strong. I've had that many times in my life, but that night has never left me. And I all of a sudden I just knew there was a God. I said, this must be God. And I didn't tell them because I was too ashamed. I felt very ashamed, and I felt very ignorant. And I know they probably saw me sitting there, and I can remember tears just were running down my face, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know, they're going to see me crying, and I'm going to, you know. And they started having refreshments, and they just left me alone. And I think many times when you're around people like me, rebellious, ignorant of God's ways, just let them have that time, because nobody came over and started laying hands on me and praying and shouting. They just let me have that time alone with God. And I got in that car with them. I was very quiet. I hung on to that book. I didn't talk to many of the people there. They didn't pressure. They asked me if I wanted something to drink, and I just said no. Got in the car, in the back seat of that car. And many times, Angie and Mildred, since that night, we've laughed and laughed, because they said it took everything they had to keep their mouths shut and get me home. Because they knew me. My personality was not somebody you want to say, well, how did that feel, Alice? Did you feel God finally? No. They were beautiful Christian women, and they were faithful. If you have a friend like that, if you have a buddy like that, if you have a grandchild like that, do that. Commit that time to fast and pray for their soul. Somebody did for mine. And I am lifelong grateful for that. And God has a calling on each life. He wants you to find that person that you're connected with. We talked about it a lot in different ways tonight, in the songs, in the fellowship we had in the other room. There's that time to just say, I'm just going to pray for that person and let God do the rest, because he surely got me. And so now I'm home in my bedroom, and Joe had been called out to work, and I went in my bedroom, and I had that big book, and I threw it on my bed, and I threw myself down on the floor, over my bed, and I just told God, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you, but I know you are there. And I want to know you. I just want to know you. And I mean, I can't tell you how deeply that has been embedded in me my whole adult life since that night. I've never forgotten it. I never will. When I go see the Lord, I'm going to thank him for prevailing on these ladies to pray for me. It's just so powerful. Your prayers are so powerful if you only knew. Amen. There's people like me out there. They just need you to pray. You don't have to shake them and throw scriptures at them or make them feel condemned. Just pray for those people. And fathers, if you have a child, my turn off from God was from my father, because God is reflected in your earthly father. He was placed there by God to become your father example on earth, and mine was not. And thank God he was saved, the week before he died. And then that night, when I did Bible flipping, by the way. I don't know if any of you have ever done that when you became Christians, but I learned it early on. Just flip and God will talk to me from whatever I read that day. And he let me get away with that for a little while, but anyway, I finally learned that doesn't always work. But I looked down, and it was, the scripture was, Zechariah 4:6. It was not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit. You know, these mountains will be removed. All the obstacles that were in my path to become a Christian began to slowly be removed. And God removed every obstacle. And now, all these years later, I'm still following him. I'm 76 years old, I'll be 77 this year, and I'm still waiting for his return, which I think at any moment could happen the way our world is going. And I'm waiting for our church to step up, become fathers to people that are fatherless. At the pantry today when I was working, I talked to some of my rehab guys and I asked them, I said, did you have a good relationship with your dad? Not one of those 5 men had a good relationship with their dad. But then the ladies that were working with me, and there was 10 of them, none of them had a good relationship with their father. No. It was like one by one I started realizing we're not alone. And so if you're a grandfather or a father, find that child in your home, and the more rebellious they are, the more God will be able to use that person. And let that child become your goal. And now 2 years ago, my son could not take care of his son. We saw him falling through the cracks like I did. And he was part of a divorce, and nobody was paying attention to him. And so Joe and I went out there and I said, I'm taking him. And now I'm raising my grandson, and he's wonderful. He's working in our church now. He's got a job now. He graduated a year early from high school. And I've just seen the influence that we have is there. Just because you're older or getting older, doesn't mean you can't still be used daily by God. I mean, I've got the pantry. I work there constantly. I work on backpacking. I work in our church, and I'm raising a teenager. And God can give you a lot of strength. Just because we're getting older doesn't mean we're falling apart. We're getting ready to go on. And that's how I see my life. I'm waiting, but I'm busy while I'm waiting. Keep busy, working with God, and he will supply all your needs. He has never, ever, ever forsaken that pantry. In almost 11 years, we have never been without food. One time we ran out of water. The next day, a guy called me. We prayed from a water place in Pulaski. Went down, he said, I got a tractor trailer full of water. Could you use it? We're like, we could use it. So we went down and we hauled water back from his place. He had over-ordered. I mean, fruits, vegetables, stores in the community, give. And so I ask you, if you have any energy at all, give it to God and he'll put it to use. You can always write a letter. I write to a young man in prison up here. He has no family. And we've been communicating for 3 years. And he just needed somebody to talk to, and he's a Christian now. So there's always somebody out there looking for you and your talents. You ladies were sharing your gifts tonight with me. You've all been doing it already. No, don't do the eyebrow thing. Come on. You have. You've already been doing it. But just ramp it up and find out where God wants to put you. So I thank you for giving me this time. Yes, I am still a Christian. Yes, I am Spirit-filled. And yes, I still love the Lord. He's been my hope, my heart, and all that I could ever hoped for.
Praise the Lord.
So God bless you guys. Thank you for having me. Lovely dinner. I enjoyed it. Thank you.